Welcome to a new fragrance review. Today I'm going to tell you the top 5 fragrance that had the biggest impact in the world of fragrance in the last 100 years. So the first fragrance I'm going to put on the list, before that I'm going to go with an honorable mention. It's an honorable mention because the impact was so huge of that fragrance that it needed to be stated, but it was made over 100 years ago, which is why it's going to be just an honorable mention, and it's Fougère Royale by Houbigant, and this fragrance has many things to why it influenced a lot the world of fragrance. The two most known fact about this fragrance is that it's the first fragrance to ever use an aroma chemical. Before that was essential oil, absolute, whatever, things that was natural. Maybe I don't know how to call it in English, but there's a word called hydrolat in French. Basically like rose water, for example. Rose water is an hydrolat in French. If you know the word for hydrolat, you can write it. But anyway, that fragrance is the first that used an aroma chemical, which is coumarin, and it's taken from tonka bean. Another thing that's really famous about this fragrance is that it's the first fougère, and the name fougère came from this fragrance. So if you're having a fragrance that's a fougère, wouldn't exist without this fragrance. I'm gonna go with another honorable mention, which is Chypre by Coty, which, the same as Fougère Royale, was made more than 100 years ago, and it's the fragrance that gave its name to the Chypre type of fragrance. So now for the actual list. First fragrance, you said it's a top 5, but it's not really a top 5, it's just in the order that came to my mind. I would say all of them really were impactful in their way. So the first one is Pour un Homme by Caron, and this fragrance, what is really special about it is that before this fragrance, which is basically a lavender and vanilla fragrance, for that lavender was really strictly a male note, and vanilla was strictly a female note. And it's the first fragrance that brought vanilla in a men's fragrance, which really helped break the barrier between what type of scent is good for a woman and which type is good for a man. Because of this fragrance that we're having now fragrance that have vanilla for men, like Le Male and Ultra Male, for example. And I would go up to say that in the modern time, it's the reason why we're having even unisex fragrance at all. Next fragrance is Habit Rouge by Guerlain, and this fragrance, again, it's a fragrance that have a big impact in the same style as Pour un Homme by Caron, and it's the fact that it's the first oriental fragrance that was made for a man. And before that time, an oriental fragrance was strictly a woman's fragrance, the same way as a fougère is a man's fragrance. Next fragrance on the list is Cool Water by Davidoff. And Cool Water, really what is special about this fragrance is that if you enjoy aquatic fragrance, you need to think Cool Water. Before that, aquatic fragrance were made really differently, and the way it was made really changed the structure of aquatic fragrance. It really changed aquatic fragrance meant is the actual pure aquatic fragrance from we know right like nowadays as an aquatic fragrance. It's really weird for me that Cool Water is such an impactful fragrance that defined the world of perfumery, when for me nowadays Cool Water is just a bunch of ripoff of other fragrance. When you think about it, Cool Water Parfum, Cool Water Wave, they are just trying to cash off of other type of fragrance, when in fact it started with something really original that even some people though they say that it's a clone of Green Irish Tweed, but it still started as a big inspiration in the world of perfume. I think it's a bit ironic, but that's how it is. Fourth fragrance I'm gonna talk about today is Polo by Ralph Lauren, and this fragrance, what it brought is really a change in the perfumery, and it's the entrance of the 80s. The fragrance was made, if I remember well, in 78. It was a bit before the 80s, but at this point the fragrance really evolved to be powerhouse, really strong fragrance with oak moss, aldehyde, not always aldehyde for the 80s though, but it really evolved to be a different type of fragrance than the years before, especially the 70s where it was more clean and elegant. 80s were more robust, more strong, and I think it really changed the way fragrance are. Might be biased because I really love the 80s and those fragrance, but I think it really had a huge impact on fragrance and completely changed a whole decade at least. Fifth fragrance is Le Male by Jean-Paul Gaultier, and there are two really big impacts that it made. And the first one that is well known is the fact that the fragrance is what initiated the style of clubbing fragrance that we still see nowadays. People that want a fragrance that project like crazy, though Le Male is not a fragrance that project like crazy, still started that want of powerful fragrance that people smell that is really attractive. The whole type of clubbing fragrance started from there. I would say a lot of fragrance could be said to be a fragrance that started an era of fragrance, the type of fragrance. Le Male have one thing that is really special that other fragrance that started the type of fragrance don't have, and it's the fact that it's the first fragrance that combined an oriental fragrance and a fougere. Those two type of fragrance. So if we go with different type of fragrance, basically the family, there's either like woody, floral, or something that is really focused on one type of note, one type of scent profile. And there are those that are like a mix, that the way they're mixed, they create something which are Chypre, oriental, and fougere. And usually those three ones cannot be mixed. You could have the one that are focused on one type of note that are mixed, or even mix one of those three. Usually those three are not mixed, and it's until Le Male that oriental and fougere were mixed. So that's about it for the list. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, well, like and share. If there are other fragrances you think I should have put on the list that are really influential, write it in the comment. I haven't talked about Invictus, Aventus, and Sauvage, that are probably the three most liked fragrance nowadays and more cloned. And the reason is mostly that I think they are cloned because they make money and not necessarily because they have a big impact on fragrance, the fragrance world. Maybe we will see something different in the following years or decades. For the time, I don't think really deserve the title of a fragrance that really changed the world of fragrance so much. I think one other honorable mention would be Bleu de Chanel, that really did a big change in the world of fragrance. I don't think it was good change, but it did have a really big change. I could have put a top 6 and put it there. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, like and share. And if you have other fragrance you think should be in the list, put it. So thanks for watching, and see you soon.